building construction and design chapter. Now, this is a very large chapter. It has a lot of information in here. But the good thing is all the questions are super basic, super easy. On the exam, they will ask you for quite a bit of things out of this chapter, but you will never know which question they will ask. It's so randomly selected. So let's get in. Let's start. And what we're going to do, we're going to start with new builds and how do you protect new home purchasers. Now, in 1972, the builders came up with this home warranty plan. And they established the organization in every single province of Canada. So in British Columbia, we have a branch, and that branch, we call it Licensing and Consumer Services Branch, or we call it BC Housing. It's just the website of BC Housing that you will see that Licensing and Consumer Services Branch. And what you will see, what they're responsible for, is to make sure that all the builders, residential builders, they're all licensed. If you're building the house for yourself, you are the owner builder, make sure that you get the authorization from this BC Housing, and make sure that everybody's educated, right? So that's kind of what you're looking for. So for the exams, on the exam, they will ask you, so this BC Housing, what type of agency is this? It is a provincial crown agency. So what it means, in every single province, they'll have its own agency that's responsible for the builders, right, for the new home builds. So in BC, we call it Licensing and Consumer Services, or BC Housing is the same thing, okay? So what are they responsible for? They're responsible for three things. They're responsible for the licensing of residential builders. Make sure that they all have a license, or if anybody who wants to do the renovation of the building envelope, which is the skin of the building, right? So that's where they will have to be licensed. Number two, administer the owner builder authorization. So if you're planning to build a house for yourself and live yourself in that house, you don't need to be licensed, but you still have to get the authorization from BC Housing, make sure that they allow you to build it. And of course, they're responsible for the education and research. So that's something that is mandatory. Make sure that all the consumers are protected. So just to summarize, if I say all builders must be licensed, maybe that's a true statement, but in this case, it's all the residential builders because that's what they're going to be testing you on the exam. They must be licensed if they will engage in a construction. Now, when they're referring to construction, they're not talking about you physically building something. For them, construction, it's build or arrange or even manage the construction. So if you're just telling people what to do and how to do things, guess what? You must be licensed in BC to do so, right? So they have to be, all the residential builders must be licensed. And here it says that they have to provide you with a warranty insurance policy, which we're going to talk in a minute. Okay, so we also have the Homeowner Protection Act. That is a legislation that all the builders have to follow. And on exam, they might ask you for this Homeowner Protection Act. Sometimes they'll put it as an abbreviation as HPA, and they'll say, what is this HPA responsible for? What is the purpose of this act? And just, you can forget about everything else, but just think, if there's any legislations, what are they for? Is to protect the consumers, right? So in this case, it's builders that, we're talking about the building of the brand new homes. So the purpose to increase consumer protection and improve the quality of residential constructions in British Columbia. That's it. So if they ask you for the purpose, just remember, is to protect the consumers. So the three regulatory requirements that comes with this, we already talked about them. The first one, that all of the residential builders must be licensed and they must be registered. So they have to take specific continuing educational courses, right? Go through some exams in here to be qualified. Number two, that all the homes must be covered by the home warranty insurance. We know that as 2, 5, and 10 years. A lot of times you would check on the new home builds and you say, so tell me about the 2, 5, and 10 warranty, right? We just say 2, 5, 10. So what they refer to is 2 years from the material labor, right? 5 years for the building envelope, which is the skin of the building, and a 10-year protection for any structural problems. So anything to do with the foundation, some big issues. Now, when is this warranty will start? It will start when the occupancy permit was issued. So as soon as somebody can occupy the property and it's been issued, that's when the warranty will kick in. Okay, so far there's 3 requirements. All the builders have to be licensed and registered. Who are they going to be registered with? With the BC Housing. Let me just go back. BC Housing, right, or the Licensing and Consumer Services. So they have to make sure that they're on that system, right? Make sure that all the homes have the coverage for them, 2, 5, and 10. And when I say all homes, I'm talking about new homes. So if it's a new build, right, that's the one that has to have those warranties. And then number 3, that all the homes must be registered in that new home registry plan. So basically what you do, if let's say you working with a purchaser, with a buyer who wants to buy one of the new builds, or if you're shopping for yourself, what you do, you go on the BC Housing website and you just type in all the address information for that new property that you're planning to purchase, right? And this way you can see, you can determine the licensing and the warranty status of that home. So you can find all the information. What type of information? Pretty much everything. Can you find about the builder? Yes, you can. Is he licensed, right? Is he properly licensed? Is the home properly registered? The warranty insurance, when did it start, right? The commencement date of the insurance. If it's an owner-built home, can it be offered for sale? Can you actually sell that house? So all that information will show up on that BC Housing website. So what if you want to build a house just for yourself? You're planning to live in that property, you bought a lot, now you're planning to build it, and you're planning to live in a house. Do you still have to be licensed? No, you don't have to. So that's an exemption. So if you build for personal use, and they say the person must intend to personally use the home for at least 1 year from the date of the occupancy and may not rent it during that year. So basically, when you get the occupancy permit and you move in yourself, within a year, you're not allowed to sell, you're not allowed to rent it out to anybody else. But what happens then? What if you want to sell it after? What if your plans change and you decided to move to a different province now? Can you do this? I mean, you have rights. You can sell the house, and that's where you will check back on this website and see, okay, is the owner builder, can he sell that? Can he offer the house for sale? So as an owner builder, you don't need to have that insurance of 2, 5, 10 years. You don't have to purchase it. But if you're planning to sell it, then you will be personally liable to that new purchaser for that warranty. So you still have to provide the one way or the other. So just know if anything happens to the house within the 2, 5, or 10 years, then as the owner builder, you will be personally liable to the new purchaser for that. Okay, so key points, let's just go back on everything. So can you sell the house that does not being approved by HPA or by the BC Housing? You're not allowed to. So if the house cannot be listed or sold or built unless everything is, all the warranty requirements are met by the HPA. Number 2, what if your home is less than 10 years or if you has been substantially reconstructed the property? So what is that substantially reconstructed? So if you renovated the property more than 75%, that's substantial. If you add the foundation to your property, so you made a bigger house, then that's substantial reconstruction. So they say licensee should take steps to ensure that all of the insurance and the licensing disclosure has been properly done under the HPA and incorporated into the contract of purchase and sale. So if you're working for the buyer, that's his contract of purchase and sale. You will add it in there. It says we want to see those warranties. We want to make sure that the house is protected. Okay, buyers must be aware of all the home warranty coverages to ensure that the warranty documents are properly transferred, right? So make sure that the buyer is aware. And then the last one, if you are representing the owner builder, then what do? You want to make sure that everything is done properly, right? Ensure that all the disclosure obligations have been met by them and that they will be able to pass it on to the buyer, right? So it's going to be no issues. Okay, so the building code. I don't know if you guys know, but we have a national building code, we have provincial building codes, basically the codes that the builders have to abide by. And on exam, sometimes they'll ask you a basic, simple question, just asking you, so what are the top objectives of those codes that we have? Pretty straightforward objections, right? The first one is the structural safety. So make sure that the foundation is structural, part of the building is good and solid. The public health, they're referring to the sanitary conditions, make sure it's livable, right? Accessibility, when they refer to the accessibility, they say, is it easy to access through the road? Right? How fast can we access the building? Because they refer to usually firefighters. So if there's anything happens in the house, and if the house catches fire, how fast those firefighters can get into the building. Fire protection, make sure they have at least minimum standards of fire protection, right, in that building. And basically that's it. That's the main objectives. So we have 2 questions. Let's work on question 1. Which of the following is the main objective of the building bylaws, such as National Building Code or the BC Building Code? Okay. What do we have in here? Which one definitely fits in? Is that a curb appeal? Is that aesthetics? Is that a public health, green building? Definitely public health, right? Because that's the sanitary conditions of the building. Good job. Question 2 is the opposite question to say which of the following is not a top level objective of the National Building Code or the BC Building Code. So we have the structural safety, which is the foundation of the building, public health, sanitary condition, right? We have aesthetics, make sure that's beautiful, you know, and the fire protection. Which one is not one of them? Of course, the aesthetics, because that's you don't have to have a beautiful building or pretty looking building for the building code. They don't care. But the health, the fire, and the structural safety, that is a must. Okay. So we're going to talk about the metric construction module. Now, this is something that our students don't really like it, or they don't really understand it, but I'll make it nice and simple for you, I promise. So basically, in Canada and US, you guys like to use the imperial system. So you use the feet and you use the inches. But the whole world uses the metric system. And that is the millimeters, centimeters, kilometers, right? That's kind of what the metric is about. So when it comes to building, they decided to have the uniformal system so everybody can understand this. So what they've done, the Canada and US, they said, okay, we'll give up on the imperial, we'll just switch everything to the metric system. So this is what the changes came through. So some changes were soft. That means they're not a big change, it's a slight change. That means the definition will change. So from inches will change to the millimeters. So the verbal definition is changed, but the size itself will not change. So the soft change is just a small change on the verbal side. So basically we change the way we phrase it. Instead of inch, we're going to call it millimeters, okay? But the size will not change. So if you convert 1 inch to the millimeters, it will come up exactly as 25.4 millimeters. And that's it, okay? So that is a soft change. So we changed the verbal definition, but we haven't changed the size. It's exactly the same size as is, okay? But when it comes to the hard change, that means they actually made a change. And that change is from verbal description, so from inches to the millimeters, right? That's the first change, but also in the size. So for example, if I take the 12 inches as an example, and if I convert them as a hard change, so it says the hard change will come up to 300 millimeters instead of 3 or 4.80. So if I take 25.4 millimeters, and if I times it by 12 right now, it will come up to 304.80. That is a soft change. Why is it a soft change? Because I just changed the inch to millimeters, but I haven't changed the size. That means 304.80 would stay as is. But if I change the actual size, and instead of 304.80, I come up as a 300 millimeters, so I change the size too, then that is a hard change. So hard change is basically a bulk. I'm not going to just take like 304.80, that's just too precise. I'll just make it as 300 millimeters. You see what happens? I just made it as a flat number. So how do you know if it's a hard change? it changes the size. And that's all I want you to know. There's no math on this. Nobody's going to give you any math questions, but they will talk, like I'll show you the question. They will talk about something like this. Okay, question 3. In the metric building module is increased from 100 millimeters to 150 millimeters. This would consider to be as which of the following? So did the verbal description changed? Not in this case. It's from the millimeters to the millimeters. But did the size change? Do you see what matters? And if the size change, yes, it's 100 millimeters to 150. That's the size change. That is definitely a hard change. Okay? So that's what I want you to look for. So now we're going to talk about the actual measurements. So when it comes to measuring an apartment building, right? So an apartment, not apartment, but an apartment. So let's say you have a new listing and it's a 2-bedroom apartment and it has a beautiful patio and you say, wow, look at that patio. And it's the largest one out of all of your neighbors. You have the largest patio. So can you include that patio into your square footage? I hope you said no. Okay. So how do you know what's includes in the square footage is everything that is livable. So whatever you can live in, then that's what you're going to use as a square footage. That's why a lot of new developments, they have small closets. Why closets are so small? Because they know that that is not a real square footage, right? They don't think it's excluded from the square footage. So this is a list of things you're not allowed to include into your square footage, like garages, the patios, the balconies, the decks, unfinished floor areas. Now that is a question mark for a lot of people and say, what do you mean? I have unfinished basement. It has a lot of square footage. Why can't I use that as partial towards my square footage, towards the house, or whatever? And he says, no. You have to add it as an extra description. It says comes with unfinished basement, but you're not allowed to take that square footage from the basement and add it to your main square footage. And opening to floor below, so if it's a vaulted ceiling and it covers the 2 floors, you're not allowed to add that as an extra square footage. And the finished areas that are not connected to the main body of the house. So what does that mean? So if you have an attic and it's not connected, so it doesn't have the staircase, it doesn't have the ways to get in there, but it has a detachable ladder, so that's where you're not allowed to use it as a square footage of that attic. But if that attic had the actual built-in staircase, so you can walk there, then you can use that as a square footage. Okay, so let's continue. That's just an example for you. So if you look at that picture, see what could be included in the house, what could not be included. You see we have a basement, but it's a finished basement. So can you include that into your square footage? Yes, you can. Of course, you can include all the rooms, right? Garage is not included. The deck is not included because it's not livable. And let's see what that attic is. Includes a finished and accessible by stairs. So if you have the stairs to that attic, then yes, you can use it as a square footage. Okay, so now we're going to talk about substructures and superstructures. So how do you know the difference between those two? If I say sub, think of it as a subway. What is the subway? Subway goes underneath the ground, right? So subway. So same thing with a substructure. That's something goes below the ground level. So for us, that will be a foundation of the building. It's built below the ground level, right? And it's serving as a support of the building or the structure, right? It supports the whole building. That's the whole idea of the foundation. For the exam, they like to ask you about the dam proofing. And they like to ask you that as a definition. So they will say, what does this stand for? I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's that black sticky material that they apply to the walls of the foundation to make it waterproof. They seal all of those capillary, all the pores in the foundation with that black sticky thing, right? And it seals it so the building becomes waterproof. That's exactly what this dam proofing is. Black coating material applied to the foundation of the walls to prevent the entry of the water by sealing minor capillary pores in the concrete. Okay, so this substructure is below the ground level. The superstructure, everything that is above the ground. Right? And we have a lot of them. We're going to talk about a lot of them. We have the joist and the stud and the plate and the truss and gosh, there's a lot of them. And you never know which one is going to be yours on the exam. So let's start with the joist, stud, and the plate. So when somebody says the joist, the stud, and the plate, look at the picture because that will help you out. So what do we have in here? So if I want to put something into this wall, okay, what am I looking for? I'm looking for the stud, right? Because that's where I can hang things, heavy things. So stud is a vertical frame, right? It goes this way. That supports the wall. Behind the wall, so it supports the wall. So if you know what the stud is, then you have to know what is joist. Joist is always opposite from the stud. I had 2 older ladies in one of my classes, and one lady says to me, come on, Yana, this is a stud. You should know that. The whole class laughed. But anyway, so stud is always vertical. And if you know what stud is, then you know what joist are. Joist is opposite. It's horizontal, right? Now, the joist, think of it as supports the ceiling and the floor, right? So it's in the walls, no, not in the walls, sorry, it's in the ceiling and it's in the floor. And the stud will be opposite, it's behind the wall, so it supports the walls. Good. Now the next one is a plate. Think of the plate as the actual plate. So if you're eating your supper, if you're eating your dinner, you want that plate to be horizontal in front of you, right? And then you will eat it. Because if that plate was vertical, then the dinner end up on your floor. Not good. So same thing. So think of it as a washer in between the joist and the stud, right? It's the plate in between. So it's a horizontal one where that studs rest upon. Then we have to know the different type of the roof structures, right? So truss and the rafter. Keep it simple. When I say truss, think of it as a prefabricated roof. So something that you can't really build yourself. It's engineered. It's more complicated if you look at all the designs in here, right? So it's something that supports the structure, but it's prefabricated. The rafter is what they want on the exam. So rafter, think of it as a roof deck. So it's a structural member that supports the roof deck, right? Something you can build yourself, right? And the roof deck goes on top of it. So in the exam, if we talk about the rafter, I always think of it as R and R. Rafter comes with a roof deck. If they don't talk about the roof deck, that means it's not a rafter. Keep it simple. Okay, question 4. Look, they're looking for that rafter. In residential building construction, the term rafter refers to roof extension used to provide an extra floor area. And the windows, I don't see the roof deck anywhere, so that's not the answer. Option 2, the structural member usually wood placed in the top of the windows opening. I don't see my roof deck anywhere. That's not the answer. The roof style commonly known as a hip roof. We never even talked about this, so it should be none of the above. So again, rafter, look for the keyword of roof deck. That's it. Keep it simple. The lintel and the header, the two things that you have to know. One, it comes from the outside exterior openings. The other one's for the interior opening. Think of the one that we have in the house because that's the easy one to remember. So on top of your doors, on top of your windows, you have the headers. The headers is the interior, right, opening. So that's a supporting structure in the interior of the house. But the lintel, it comes supporting the structure over the exterior opening. So from the outside of the building, if you have something on top of your window, that is a lintel, right? So think of the lintel outside, the header is inside. True statements. Question 5. Which of the following statements regarding the superstructure terminology is true? Option 1, plate is a vertical lumber. I can stop. Because what did I say about the plate? If you're eating your dinner, that plate better be horizontal, not vertical. So if it's vertical, that is a full statement. Header, supporting structure over the exterior. No, header is the inside of the house, right? On top of your doors and windows. That's false. Rafter, I'm looking for the keyword of roof deck. Do we have that? Nope. And the joist is a horizontal. So if the stud goes this way, the joist goes horizontal. So option 4 is the right one. When you go through the questions, I want to make sure that you know the other options. Why are they true or why are they false? Make sure that you highlight those keywords so this way you know what you're aiming for. Good job. Okay, so what can you build a building out of? Could that be a log building? Have you seen the log buildings? Yes, we have those ones. An A-frame building. It's an older type of style. It's a brick, that's Europe. Stone, concrete, Western platform wood frame. We have a lot of those ones in BC, and the post beam and plank. So for the example, they ask which one is the most commonly seen in British Columbia. And if they don't specify the type of house, then that would be a wood frame. Why they don't specify? Because if I say a high rise, then that would be a concrete. But if I just say which one is the most commonly used styles, then that's a wood frame. You get the point, right? Because wood frame cannot be used for the high-rise buildings. High-rise is only concrete. It's not strong enough. Post beam and plank styles, now usually the style that has the windows all the way from the floor to the ceiling. So it's very, very large windows. Post beam and plank is the roof is formed of planks that are secured by beams, right, which are supported by the post, right? So that's why it's post beam and plank. It's pretty easy to remember. Question 6. Which of the following statements regarding the post beam and plank styles is correct? Option 1, it maximizes utility of a narrow lot according to the zoning criteria. We never talked about that. That's definitely not true. It is one-story building, usually incorporated in the garage under the continuous sloping roof. Can you put that rancher in here? Because that's the definition of a rancher, one-story level. I'll teach all that stuff later. Under one roof, incorporated with the garage. Okay, so that's definitely not this style. It is often characterized by large covered verandas and the roof lines. So that's not the one. And roof that is formed by planks that are secured by beams, which in turn is supported by posts, right? You see a lot of keywords, so you know option 4 is definitely the one. All the other ones, don't panic. I'm going to explain you about the styles. It's coming up. It's coming up soon. Okay, question 7. One way that housing styles can be classified is that the structural method used in construction. Which of the following terms does not describe the type of the constructional method? So which one is definitely not a method of the construction in here? Do we have the log way? Yes, we do. Concrete blocks? Yes, we do. Vaulted ceiling. What's vaulted ceiling? That is a high ceiling, okay? And post beam and plank. So definitely no vaulted ceiling, because that's not a structural method. It's not the type of house that you will have. It's just one of those, how to call it, it's a feature of the home. On the exam, sometimes they'll give you a drywall. So same thing, drywall is just the material that you use inside of the house. It's not a structural method. So no drywall, no vaulted ceiling. So now we're going to talk about different type of frames. So you have to know the difference between the wood frame, the concrete, the steel frames. There's 4 different frames that you have to know. So what do we use the wood stud frame for? It's very commonly used, but it's used for what type of building? High-rise or low-rise? Now, that's definitely for the low-rise, right? So this is something used for the low-rise building. You can't build something higher than 6-story building with a wood frame because it will fall, right? So stairways must be enclosed with a fire-resistant material if you're building something higher, right? Like under the 6th floors, but you have to have the stairways enclosed. So what are the advantages? It's a low cost, right? So think of it this way. We have in British Columbia, we have a lot of wood. We have a lot of trees in here. So for that reason, that is an advantage. It's a low cost method. And what is the disadvantage? What happens to wood sometimes? It shrinks, right? So if the water goes in there, it can do all different things to that. So that's the only issue with the wood frame. Okay, so now we have a steel frame and a concrete frame. I want you to look at both of those pictures. And when you see the new construction of the high-rise building, tell me which one do you see the most? Just by look. Okay, which one do you see the most? Most of you guys will see the concrete because that's the one we use the most for the high-rise building. The steel, it's used in the past. So the older buildings we used to have, like they used to use this steel, but these days they don't use it anymore, and you'll know why. Okay, why they don't use it as much? Because it costs. It's very expensive to build something with a steel frame building, right? So cost, and it costs more to fireproof. That is an issue with this steel frames, because you still have to build up the walls around the steel frame to make it more fireproof. So that means whoever is a builder and they're planning to build with steel, it's going to cost them more in the material, but it's also going to cost them more to fireproof the building, to pass those codes, the fire codes that they have to pass. Now, this is also a disadvantage. It says no room for change, hard to redesign this steel frame. So when it's built, it is built, and you can't change or move things, right? And it requires additional fireproofing. That's a huge one for the exams. So what's the advantages? Non-combustible, that means non-flammable, right? So that means it's good. Non-shrinkage, it's not like wood, it cannot shrink. Can be built very quickly, gather percentage of usable interior space, and fire resistance can be added, but you still have to spend money on that, okay? So just know that's not commonly used anymore. It's in the past. So why do we like the concrete? Because look, do we have any disadvantages here? Absolutely none. Why do we like this style so much? Because it doesn't cost as much. It is easier to remodel or change things, redesign things. You don't need extra fire safety, so you don't need to add on any more fire things. So it says maximum fire resistance already. So it comes with the building, it's fire resistance, and no additional protection is required for you to fireproof this building, okay? So more flexibility when it comes to design, and more economical, so it doesn't cost that much, okay? Mid to high-rise multifamily buildings. And the last one is called a masonry and wood frame. Now, this is we don't use this anymore. It's an old type of design. As you see, there's nothing positive. It's only disadvantages. It's only negative. It's basically when the builder combines all the styles together. It has the bricks, it has the concrete, it has a wood frame, it has everything in it, and it's a mess. Do you think it's easy to get a fire protection or fire approval? It's very hard. So that's why they don't like them. This construction style has become less common with the more stringent fire bylaws. So you see how the fire bylaws affect everything? This is a hard one to approve. Okay, question 8. In regards to concrete framing, which statement is true? It considered more of a quality than wood in homes. Is that true? We'll talk about this in a minute. Option 2, it is difficult to redesign a concrete. Do we have any disadvantages with concrete? None. So for that reason, it's easy to redesign. That's false. It is more prone to damage in case of fire compared to the steel. That's definitely false, because concrete has no disadvantages. Right? And option 4, it is not suitable for high-rise and mid-rise. It is definitely suitable. So option 1 is the best one out of all of them. It's considered to be more quality than wood homes. So basically, even if it's your detached home, you should try to build it with the concrete. It's much better. Question 9. Which of the following is not an advantage of the steel frame construction? So which one is not an advantage? It is non-combustible, so that means it's non-flammable. That's true. It is less expensive than reinforced concrete. Ooh, that's where the false statement comes up, because it is way more expensive than concrete, right? Does not have any shrinkage. That's true. Fire resistance can be added, so that's also true. Okay. Question 10, which of the following is the most common type of construction today for the high-rise apartment buildings? And you said, good job. Definitely concrete is the one. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the building envelope. So think of that as a skin of your building. Like we have a skin on us, right? What is the skin for? Is to protect you from all your organs and all your bones, to keep it all in place. Same thing when it comes to building envelope. So think of it as a protection from the wind, from the dust, from the moisture, from all the rains that we have in British Columbia, right? So we have the doors, we have the windows, we have the insulation to protect us. So that is called the building envelope, right? Think of it as a skin of the building. We have that. And why do we want to talk about this? Because in British Columbia, we had a lot of issues with the leaky condos crisis. You've heard that, right? Leaky condos. Now, what are those leaky condos? When they were building buildings then, they thought that if they put an extra, if they seal the exterior walls, so if they put the sealant on the exterior walls, then it becomes waterproof. And that was a false idea, because they did not realize that the water is still going to go through that insulation. And what happens to that water that goes through the insulation? It gets stuck in the middle of that wall. And that's where the mold comes through, and the wall starts to deteriorate. And that's where the leaky condos start breaking down like crazy. And there was no money in the contingency fund. And all the people that owned those apartments or buildings, they had to pay out of their personal pockets. And that was a crisis that everybody had. So leaky condos was a big problem. So then BC Building Code, they came up with this rain screen. So they said that you have to incorporate it in all of the buildings in BC now, because we do have a lot of rain here. And this rain screen, what it does, instead of focusing on the exterior walls, it's basically, it lets the water goes through, dry out, and get out, right? And that's kind of how so it doesn't go inside of the walls itself, and the moisture doesn't stay in. So you don't need to know all that information. All you have to understand is what the building envelope is for, is to protect you, right, from everything. You protect your building, basically. I know this will look scary, next 2 slides, but don't worry. It's not bad, okay? Sometimes they might just ask you a question, what is this wall build-up, right? What is the main purpose of the wall build-up? So what is the wall is made out of, okay? So the whole idea of the wall is to protect the building, right? To maintenance of the internal environment, so all the organs and the bones, you want to make sure that you maintain it. And of course, the interior finish on top of it. So the wall from the inside, you'll have the paint, or you'll have the wallpaper, whatever that is you have. don't be scared of the slide. I know a lot of people look at this, oh my gosh, there's a lot of information. That just shows you how do you build the wood frame exterior wall. So how does the wall is made out of? When we built my office, I was watching them, right, just to see how it looks. It doesn't have all the steps. So we'll go from the inside out, right? So interior finish. So what do you have? Do you have a paint? Do you have a wallpaper? Makes sense. The vapor barrier. So usually in real life, we call it poly. It's just that plastic that they put in there to protect from all the moisture, right? Insulation, right? So usually glass fiber bat, we'll look at it. So usually pink or yellow things, so the white ones that you put inside of it to have the insulation. The wood frame, right? And then we have the poly, right? And then building papers from the outside of the building, and then you put the siding on top of it. It could be stucco, it could be whatever that is, right? So don't be scared of this. That's just to show you how we build up the levels to protect ourselves from all these problems that we might have. Okay, so when it comes to roof, a few things you have to know. It's pretty simple. First of all, you have to know what zinc stands for and like what do you use that for. So every time you have a roof that is in the shade in some way, right, sometimes it creates the moss, and it's very hard to get rid of. So what do? You add the zinc strip on the top of the roof to prevent the moss. So on the example, they ask you what's the zinc for? To prevent the moss. Simple. Okay, you have to know that we have different type of roof inspections. So when you look at the roof and say, okay, so what's happening here and what's happening there? So we have a fish mouth, just like that. It's a circle kind of thing, right? You see how those little sticking out circles in there? When the asphalt shingles have lifted in the middle. So if it's in the middle, then that's a fish mouth. The edge curl, that's when it curls up, just like that, right? When the asphalt shingles have curved up at each edge, right? So that's kind of what you have to know the names for. Then the last thing that you have to know about the roof is the metal flashing. I personally have never seen this, but apparently they put this to direct the rain-driven moisture away. So that's for the moisture protection too. So you can put that and it will seal the roof, metal flashing. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the external cladding. So basically how you finish the building from the outside. So for example, I want you to know that the aluminum or the vinyl siding is the best, right? Why? Because it is a low cost. It doesn't cost you that much and it's very durable. It lasts you for a long time. Stucco is not very popular anymore. We see quite a lot of buildings still built with stucco exterior, but because of the rains, it cracks and it peels and it doesn't look that beautiful after a while, right? So that's the problem with the stucco. So now we're going to talk about the doors and windows. A lot of random information in this chapter, but that's what it is. Okay, so exterior doors. So when I refer to the exterior doors, now you don't have that specific slide on your notes. It's just a common sense. But what can you build the doors out of? Can you have a rubber door? It would be nice, but no. You usually make it out of the wood, out of the metal, and out of the glass, right? Common sense. But when it comes to the interior doors, you have to know two different types. You have to know that we have the sliding doors, right? We call them the sliding pocket doors, and then we have the folding doors. Folding doors is the commonly, it's the older style of doors that just folds, right? And the sliding doors are the one that slides inside of the frame wall, right? In and out, just like this. Now the windows. For the exam, you have to know which window is the best one for the extreme outside temperature weathers. So if it's minus 45 right now, and you're freezing, and it says, what should I do? I would tell you, go get a better type of windows. So a double glaze, that's the one that has a double window in there, and then the single glaze is the one that has only one window in there. Now, when it comes to single glaze, it comes as a non-thermal broken frame, but when it comes to double glaze, it comes with a thermal broken frame. So which one do you think is the better one? Please choose the double. The more insulation it has, the better that is, right? The better the heat will stay in. So double glaze with a thermal broken frame is the best type of windows. So for the exam, we need to know 4 different types. You have to know what type are you looking at, right? So they will give you the story and then they will ask you, so what is this? What type of window? So how do you define which window you're looking at? It depends on the hinges. Are they at the top? Are they on the side? Are they at the bottom? So let's look at the first two. We have the awning window and we have a hopper window. An awning window, think of the letter A, just like this. And if it's an awning window, the hinges will be at the top. That's how my students remember this. Awning, hinges at the top, opens outwards, okay? The hopper will be opposite, so the hinges at the bottom and it opens inwards, okay? Usually we use those ones at the bathrooms. Okay, then we have the casement window. So think of the casement as if for the letter C, right? So my students always think of it as a letter C. And if it's a letter C, the hinges will be on the side of that window, right? That's how you have to think of it, and it opens outwards. And then tilt and turn, it's kind of a combination of the casement with the hopper window. On the exam, we don't really see that one, but it's mostly about the hinges, right? The word the hinges. So let's do 2 questions. Let's see if you understood them. So you have question 11. House has a window with the hinges at the top and opens outward. What type of window is this? What do you think? Hopper, casement, awning. I hope you said awning, right? Because if it's at the top, letter A, just like that. Okay, one more. Let's see if we can get this one. House has a window with the hinges on the side. What type of window is this? Good job. Casement window, right? On the side, that's the letter C. Okay, good. So now we're going to talk about insulation. So 2 different types of insulations you have to know for the exam. So we have the glass fiber bath insulation, and then we have the cellulose fiber insulation. So the most commonly used is the glass fiber. That's the one that you're going to see in different colors. It could be a pink one, it could be the yellow one, it could be the white one. And the way we determine how good is the insulation is based on its R value. So the thicker the R or the higher the R value, the better the insulation is. So for example, when I was building the studio, then I had to make sure that they would bill me with the highest R value insulation because I want to be sure that I can, I can talk, right? So that's kind of the idea of this. The cellulose fiber insulation, that's a different type. That's the one that they spray, right? It's not just the foam blocks, it's just like they spray it actually, and it's made out of the shredded recycled newspaper, right? They put some chemicals in there, and that prevents from fire and from mold and fungi and from different pests, right? So rats and stuff like that. People put that usually in the attics. Question 13, which of the following statements is a true statements? So because it's an ABCD question, you're going to use the method of elimination. Good. So we're going to find the one that we know, and then we're going to go through the answers. So look at option A. The three most common exterior door materials are rubber, metal, and plastic. What do you think? No, definitely no rubber. There's definitely no plastic. So that is a full statement. So I already know A is a full statement. So whatever has A, I would cross it off. So I know option 1 is out and option 4 is out. And if I look at option 2 and 3, what you see? You see the B is already in there, so I don't really have to read the B. I know it has to be a true statement, but the C and the D is where I have to focus on. But let's look at option B, see why is it true. Glass fiber bat is the most common type of the wall insulation, and it's rated according to the R value. That's true, okay? So we don't have to look at this, but C and D is what we have to know. So option C, when the opening position of the window is hinged at the top, okay, and opens outwards, known as a casement window. Is that true? Okay, you know that one? It's definitely false if it opens on the top. Right? So hinges on the top, opens outward, that is your awning window, right? So for that reason, that's a false statement. So I already know the answer should be number 3. So manufactured vinyl siding is popular because of its low cost and ability to maintain its finish. So that is definitely a true statement. Okay, so A, B, and D are the true statements. Good. Next one. So now we're going to talk about HVAC systems. Now, HVAC, what does it stand for? H stands for heating, right? Then we have V for the ventilation, AC is your air conditioning. So we're going to spend a lot of time on the heating and then just a little bit on the ventilation and air conditioning. So for the exams, they want you to know that we have so many different types of heating systems. So what you see here, this is just for the multifamily heating. So if you live in a condominium where you have neighbors, if you live in a strata, right, a high-rise building, so that's the multifamily heating system. And if you live in one of those buildings, out of those 4 systems, which one do you have in your house? If you can recognize it, which one? Most of you guys will have the electrical one. How do you know if it's electrical? Because every single room, can you heat up separately? Do you have the adjustments? Yes, you do, right? So that's exactly what that is. It's a very flexible system. It's nice because every single unit can heat up separately, independently from the other neighbors. You can heat up each room separately, right, to determine what temperature you want where. You don't need to have a furnace in the middle of your bachelor, right? So no furnaces. And it's good for the developers because if they build it, then they know that they can charge every single unit, so they know exactly who consume how much. So that's the most common one. The least common one will be the steam heating one. So this is the most common, then less and less and less, okay? Forced hot air usually comes up still in the row houses, could be in townhouses maybe even still, but it's a bit older system, right? So forced hot air, so that's when you have the vents in your floor, sometimes in the walls, right? So that's where the air comes through, right? And that's how you heat up the house. You have to heat up the whole house at once. You can't just pick and choose which room do you want to heat up, right? It has those duct pipes, where, and it's kind of like windy, right? So it's drafty, we call it the system. So it's not the best one for the multifamily use, that's for sure. Central hot water system. Now this is something I grew up with. We used to have those type of buildings where you have the wall thin units. I don't know if you heard such a thing, right? So it's basically a thin unit. I had those metal ones, the big ones, and you can feel the water inside of them. You can feel it when it warms up, right? So you're just standing right next to you. So in Canada, you guys are spoiled. You don't have those ones anymore. Maybe some very, very old heritage building might still have it, but basically no more, right? No more of the hot water system. That one, very inconvenient, let's say that way, and it takes a very slow response. It takes a lot of time to heat up, basically. Steam heating system, you won't even see it anywhere anymore, right? So basically the heating is based on steam. So for the multifamily heatings, they say the minimum temperature for any heating system has to be at least 22 degrees. So now we're going to talk about detached houses, right? Single family houses, and what type of heating systems do you have? Now for the exams, we want you to know that we have 4 different ones. So yes, we still have the electrical baseboard heating system, right? Hot air, hot water, and then we have the wood fireplace heating system. So you have to know the advantages and disadvantages of each of them. So what's positive and what's negative? So we already talked about the electrical one. What is so positive about this one? It's very flexible, right? You can heat up every single unit separately or every different room separately. You don't have to heat up the whole house, so that's good. You're not going to have any duct pipes anywhere for the vents because there's no vents in there, right? No central furnace system, so you don't have to have furnace there, right? So that's kind of what's so nice about it. It's very clean temperature too. What's negative? When they use the word baseboard, that's already a negative thing. Why? Because it takes away your space. So if you want to put a couch, if you want to put your bed right next to that wall and it has a baseboard heating system in there, you know, then it takes away the space away from you. So that's kind of a negative thing, but not much. Next one, we have a hot air, forced hot air system. That's where you have those duct pipes. Now, but what is positive about this system? What's positive is that it heats up super, super fast. Air heats up fast, water heats up very slow. Right? So the positive thing about the hot air, it's a quick, rapid response, especially when it comes to extreme outside temperature weather. So when it's super cold outside, guess what? You probably want to have one of those systems. Right? Air filtration could be included, humidifier may be added, but you can never add AC. So what's negative about this system? Sometimes on the exam they'll ask you, out of all of this system, which one is a drafty one? the drafty. Drafty is windy, and that will be the hot air system. So that is a negative thing. It's not a positive thing, because your desk could be right next to the vent, and all this air and the dust can blow in your face, and that's not that pleasant, right? It requires the ductwork under your floor and the ceiling, so that's where you have all the vents. And the problem with that, because there's a lot of dust can accumulate in there, or a lot of pests like rats can go inside of it, right? So that's not pleasant. Next one, the hot water. What's negative about the hot water? We just said that. It's slow. It takes a lot of time to warm up. So it's very slow. So it's not the positive one for the extreme outside temperature weather. So if it's too cold, don't have that, because it's going to take you forever to warm up. And what else is negative? It can freeze, because it is water, right? Water can freeze. So that's kind of what not good about it. But what's nice about the hot water, when it warms up, it becomes a steady, consistent heat. So with the hot air, if you open the door, the temperature drops. But when it comes to hot water, the temperature is steady, right? And that's kind of what is nice about it. So again, for the exam, just know what is a wall fin units. From my childhood, I remember they were pretty bulky and pretty big ones, right? And they say the bigger the units are, it will increase the heating surface, right? So basically, wall fin units increases the heating surface. So the bigger they are, the more heat you will have in the house. But of course, it takes a lot of your space from your house too, right? So that's not that positive. So the last one is a wood fireplace. I love that. I live in a house where my main heating system is through the wood stove, right? So what's positive about this is you can send your husband to the woods and say, chop, 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 chop. So it is cheap. It doesn't cost you much, right? So that's a positive. And it provides you with this comfortable heat, right? This is the only type of heat that gives you that, like when you can feel it on your cheeks and your arms, right? So that's kind of a positive. But it has mostly negative thing for the exams. It says it only heats up one room at a time. It is fire hazard. Dust, right? Ashes, all can come from this. You also have to have a storage for all of the wood, right? So in order for you to to warm it up, you need to have this fuel storage in there, right? And sometimes the bugs go inside of it and stuff like that. So not that pleasant. So next one, we're going to talk about the convection and radiation stuff. Just make sure that you kind of understand this. For the exam, they want you to know that every single system is a convection, right? Convection heating. So all of them are convection. So convection is basically when the transfer of the heat happens and you can feel it, right? So it comes from one item and it kind of affects the other items, which is you, right? The conduction, none of our system have conduction. Conduction is when you physically have to touch something for the heat to transfer from one part to the other part, right? So you don't want to touch the heating to feel warm. So we don't have that. And the radiation stuff, now this is just an example for you. You don't have to know this stuff, that just to show you, right? Radiation happens with two types of heating systems. It definitely happens with a wood fireplace, right? That's where you can feel that wave of heat coming to you, right? And that's how you feel it on your cheeks, right? That's because of the radiation, right? And also the electrical has some of that radiation too, so when you can feel that heat waves. So we're going to do this question 17. And when we read through the question, I'm going to stop in a couple of parts and you're going to tell me which system would be the best for that. So Teresa has just added a secondary story to her flat-roofed ranch-style home, and she has asked you to help her to determine what sort of heating system to install. Teresa is looking for a clean, convenient system that can respond quickly to temperature changes and can provide both convection and radiation heat transfer. Okay, just looking by that, if I say quick to temperature changes, it definitely cannot be a water system, right? No hot water in here, okay? Can provide both convection and radiation, so that means air, hot air is also out, right? And we're left with electrical, and we're left with a wood fireplace. Because the rooms will not be able to use all at once, she does not want the system that will activate heats all the rooms. So which one do you think is better? And both electrical and a wood fireplace sounds pretty good, but you have to choose the better one. Which one did you choose? This definitely has to be the electrical. So some questions you should have to know them as they are. But in this case, they aim towards electrical because they want you to know that each room will be heated up separately, right? Good. Question 18, electric baseboard heaters are the common example of what? Everything is based on the convection heat, right? So that's good. Okay, so now we're going to talk about ventilation stuff. So HVAC, the heating part, ventilation, and air conditioning stuff. So do we want to have ventilation at our houses? Yes, we do, right? So when you cook, you want to have those vents on top of it, right? Or the washroom, you kind of want to have those vents in there. So we have all different types of ventilation, includes the range hoods, the bathroom fans, ventilation fans, right? So all different types of fans. So what are the benefits? That better indoor air quality. So again, when you're cooking, you want to make sure that you have that vent on top of your stove, right? Control over the location, so you have the rights to choose where you want to put those vents, and improve comfort, so you can push the air, the flow of the fresh outer air the way you want it to go. So the plumbing system. The plumbing system is basically the same. Look, if you're going to do an inspection or if you're trying to sell a house, you kind of have to look through the plumbing and electrical and see, so what is it made out of? What type of metal do you have? For the exams, you have to know that aluminum is one of the metals we're watching for. And this is the one that you don't want to have in the house. A lot of older type of style houses have the aluminum wiring and plumbing, and that's the issue. Because that is a flammable, that is the softest metal. And that's where a lot of times when the house catches on fire with no reason, it's because of aluminum. But you can have copper, that's fine. You can have plastic plumbing, you can have galvanized steel, that's all good. Now, what if an exam will ask you, when it comes to plumbing, and based on the National Plumbing Code, what is a must and what is not a must for you to have out of the plumbing? So washrooms, right? The toilets or the kitchen, is that a must plumbing in each unit? I hope you said yes. But when it comes to laundry facility, that's the only one that it doesn't have to be in every single unit. And a lot of older buildings, right, high-rise buildings, they might sell the units to you, but the laundry facility will be on the first floor somewhere, right? So where everybody's going to be using and sharing. So that's something that is not mandated on every single unit, but everything else is. So we have some students coming back from the exam and they says, look, we've seen some questions on potable water. What is potable? Potable is a fresh water, okay? And we have two different types of supplies of water. If you live in a city, then you're going to have the regional water supply system. That's the one that doesn't require any maintenance from you. It all supplies through your city to you to use. It's pretty simple. But in the end of the year, will you pay taxes? Yes, you will. You'll pay water taxes. And it's nice because the government can charge you based on your water usage, right? So they'll know exactly how much you use. But then if you live like me, somewhere outside of a city, right, and you have your acreage, then you will probably have the individual water system supply. And this is where you have to be cautious as an owner or as a buyer. You want to find out what type of water do they have in here, right? What type of well, right? Is it a gravity-fed system? Is it a pressure-fed system? What do you have in here, right? And then if you're working with those buyers, you want to make sure that they do the water testing too, right? Just to make sure that everything is good for drinking. Gravity-fed system, that's an old-fashioned system. That's where you pump it up out of the gravel, right? That's what I used to do when I was a kid. And the pressure-fed system is usually when you have electrical pump, right? And if electricity goes down, then you have also no water. So that's all you have to know about the water system. So then we have the electrical code system. So the Canadian electrical code system says that it doesn't matter how big or how small the place is, but the minimum requirement for every single household has to be 100 amps. So it doesn't matter how small, it doesn't matter how big, minimum has to be 100 amps. Good. Then you have to know the formula. The formula comes with the electrical system. I know it as a W, right? For me, it's a women power, right? So the W is the formula, right? And they'll ask you what does it stand for? Watts equals volts times by amps. So the question might look just something like that, and they will ask you, so what formula would you use in here, right? So out of all of them, you would choose the one that has the watts equals, and then volts times by amps. Some of you guys will have a question on the definition, and they say, so what is the wattage, or what is the voltage, or what is the amperage? They usually give you the true and false statement, and they will ask you, so what's wattage stands for, okay? So the wattage, I remember that again as a power, women power, okay? So power of the consumption, right? That's the wattage, and amperage I know it as the electrical flow, right? So for me, I know the two definition out of three, and that's easier that way, so this way I can use the method of elimination. And I would suggest the same thing for you, right? Wattage, I don't even have much keywords in here, I guess the pressure of the current flow, but for me, amperage, electrical flow, and the wattage is the power. Okay, so how do you protect yourself from the overflow? If you turn too many lights at once and every single appliance in your house, then how do you protect yourself from the overflow? It's usually through the breakers or the fuses. Fuses is the old system, right? The breakers is what we use right now. So let's continue. So have you heard about such a thing as called the knob and tube wiring? Have you heard that? It's pretty old system. It's still usable though. So how do you recognize it if the house has this knob and tube wiring? Is when you look at the outlet. If the outlet has only two holes, then that's the knob and tube wiring. And that's it. It's still usable. It's okay. On the exam, they might give you a question, say, oh, the house was built in 1932. The house was built, whatever. If the house was built before 1950, they all had that knob and tube wiring. And that's okay. You still can use it up to this day. So everything is usable. That's okay to use except aluminum. No aluminum. Okay? Now the elevators on the exam, starting to come up the elevator questions. They want you to know two things. They say, what's the speed that should be given to every single elevator, and then what kind of, how do we measure the speed? So how do we measure the speed is the feet per minute, FPM, right? So feet per minute, that's something that you have to know for the exams, and the minimum speed for any type of elevators has to be 200 feet per minute, right? That's the minimum. Or it should be no slower than the 2 times of the distance from the top to the floor of the rise. So for example, if you look at that example, do you see how 3 of them highlighted in yellow? One of them has only a rise of 50 feet, and if I times it by 2, it only comes up to 100. If I take 75 times it by 2, it comes up to 150, and that's slower than 200 feet per minute. So for that reason, all of those ones below 100 feet are still 200 feet per minute because you can't have it slower than 200 feet. But if you see the rise is higher than 100 feet, then you multiply that by 2. So if it's 150, now I multiply it by 2, and the speed should be 300 feet per minute. If it's 300, then it should be 600 feet per minute, right? So that's how they kind of look at this. So if I give you an example, question 15, and if they ask you how do you measure that speed of the elevator, is that people? Is that floor? Is it stories? What is that? Hopefully you choose the feet, right? So that's easy. Question 16, the Enigma is a new apartment building. The distance from the bottom landing to the top floor of the Enigma is 275 feet, okay? So that is more than 100 feet. So that means what are you gonna do with this number? You're gonna multiply it by 2, and that will give you the answer, right? So if you take 275 times it by 2, then that will be 550 feet per minute. If that was less than 100, then you would choose 200 feet per minute as a minimum speed. Okay, we're getting to the fun part. So this is a house classification style. I love this stuff. So basically, when you look at the house, you should know, what are you selling? Is that a West Coast Contemporary? Is that a Victorian style? Is that a Tudor style? Is that a Vancouver Special style? There's so many styles of the houses. On the exam, they will test you on this. They usually choose one, and they'll give you one of them, and it says, so what are you looking at? What type of style is this? I can tell you which one comes up right now in the exam, but it's not going to help you because it might change next month, next week. So we're going to learn all of them. So the very common style that they like in the exam is called the West Coast Contemporary style. Now, this is the style that looks like the ski resort type of style, kind of built in the 1980s. You can see it has large windows, it has a stained wood in here, it has an angular roof. And so all that is kind of a definition of this style. So I did highlight for you the keywords, what you should be looking for. 1 or 2 stories, angular roof, large glass area, stained wood in here, right? So all that is the keyword to kind of figure out what you're looking at. So that's called the West Coast. Then we have the ranch, or rancher, whatever you want to call it. But this is the type of house on the exam will ask you, is that 1 or 2 story house? Now, what is ranch? Ranch is one style, right? One style, one roof, everything is under one roof, basically. That's what rancher stands for. It says under the continuous sloping roof, incorporated the garage, so that means garage is under the same roof as the whole house. Yes, you can have a basement in there, but on the exam you choose 1 story, 1 roof, and the garage is attached to that house under the same roof. Tudor style. Tudor style is, sometimes they call it Elizabethan style. It's the same thing. Now, I don't see many of those. I know in Richmond by Costco, they have this hotel just across from Costco, and it looks just like that. It's made from the post, made out of the beam and plaster. So the walls made out of plaster. So there's no drywall, it's basically clay, right? And then we have a beam and post, that's the brown stuff. That's the Tudor style. And then we have Vancouver Special. Vancouver Special is not because of the style. This is just 1970s type of houses that was built then. But how do you define the Vancouver Special? It's because those houses were built on a narrow lot. That's how you have to remember them. Look how much space they have in between. There's nothing there. You see how close they are? Because the lots are very narrow. And that's kind of what you have to look for in the exam. Then we have the Victorian style. Now, those ones, they look like little castles. I see a lot of those ones on the island. And there's a lot of keywords in here. You can pick and choose which one jumps at you. I personally like the cookie cutter trims because I know those houses have a lot of wooden trims around the windows and the doors, right? But you can choose the shingle roofed, big turtles, heavy chimneys, brick cladding, whatever works for you, right? So that's the Victorian style house. Then we have the arts and crafts. In real life, we call it heritage style. So heritage style houses is the one that has the large covered verandas. On the exam, we call them arts and crafts. So keep it that way. And you can pick and choose any keywords that you like personally. Very fine woods, generally, massiveness, strength, solid stonework base, right? So anything that jumps at you, please choose that and keep it as a keyword for yourself. And then the last one is a classical. To me, classical is very symmetrical house, right? So it's kind of one shape, usually 2 or 3 stories, and they have those wide columns. So to me, that's how I know it's definitely a classical style. It has an open porches usually, right? And it has the, how do you call it, the flat or low slope roof, right? So that's kind of your definition of the classical style houses. Was that easy? Okay, a couple of questions. Question 19, the West Coast style is a housing design that is what? Is usually a 2-story structure with a low sloping roof. Does it draw its appearance from the pioneer area? No. Typically it has an exterior of a stained wood and angular roof components. That sounds like that. Is it designed to move? No, that would be a mobile house. So out of all of them, option 3, hopefully that's the one you picked, is the better option. What keywords did you choose? How do you know what the keywords in this one? The stained wood and the angular roofs, right? That's what they're looking for. Okay, so now we're going to talk about different variation of the external style. We have 4 different things that we have to know. We have to know the bay windows, we have to know the dormers, we have to know the cathedral entrance, and the vaulted ceiling. So there's 4 things we have to know, okay? So what is a bay window? Have you seen this? When the windows are sticking out? When the walls basically expanded from the outside? Yes, so that's called a bay window because it increases the size of the room. And how do you increase the size of the room? By extension of the floor and the walls, okay? Instead of extending up towards the roof, you're expanding on the walls itself, right? So why is it so good? Because you can use that as a square footage of the house. So when you do the calculation, you can add that into the square footage. Now, dormer, very common question in the exam, they'll ask you what is dormer? Dormer is a mini roof extension. So it's kind of that extending from your roof. And what it does, it brings more light into the house, which is kind of nice, right? It provides the headroom and light to the upper level. Then we have the cathedral entrance. Now, I don't know if you've seen those ones. It usually happens on the older type of houses, right? When it has it usually happens in the A-frame roof designs, and it creates the high entrance hole, right? That's it. It's just the high entrance. Vaulted ceiling. Now, what's this? That is a high ceilings. And so basically, your ceiling follows your roof line, right? So basically, all the way to the roof, it just follows all the way through, and it usually happens in the post and beam homes when you have those beams in here sticking out, right? That's when you have the vaulted ceiling too. It's beautiful. I love it. Question 20. So some architectural variation may occur in the housing style. Terms like bay window, dormer, cathedral entrance, vaulted ceiling are often encountered in home descriptions. Which of the following provide extension of the floors and the walls to increase the size of the room? Which one did you choose? I hope you said the bay window, right? That's where it extends the walls, right? The dormer, what is that for? That's for extra lights, right? Vaulted ceiling, it's a high ceiling, and the cathedral entrance is a high entrance. Good job. The last part, I promise, no more. So this is the last part. Okay, so We're going to talk about the energy efficient houses. So basically, how do you save yourself energy, right? So how you don't pay too much in bills. So on the exam, they call them R2000 houses. So when you see the R2000, is the same thing as an energy efficient house, something that has a metal frame, double glazed windows, insulated doors, draft-free building envelopes, all the goodies, and the windows have to be facing south. So on the exam, you have to know why is it south. Because if you're trying to save yourself energy in the bills, the heating bills, guess what? Your largest window should be facing south, not north, but south. Why? Because it is warmer. That's what we want. It's sunnier. Question 21, which of the following action would not be found in the R2000 home? Sometimes they'll go to the energy efficient home, same thing. Construction of the draft-free building envelope, that's actually positive. Large north-facing windows to absorb the passive solar energy. Now that is hopefully said is a full statement because the windows should be facing south. Good. Everything else is good. Insulation, right? That's good. So the green construction, we call it the LEED design building. So a lot of times when you pull up the listings, it will say LEED design, right? Or built under the LEED, right? So for the exam, sometimes they'll ask you for that definition and say, what does LEED stands for? L-E-E-D, it's the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. So they're trying to make the building that consumes less energy, that requires minimum care and maintenance, allows the ample fresh air and a natural airflow, natural light, provides the healthy indoor living, and takes advantage of the renewable resources like solar heat, the natural airflow, right, the rainwater. So whatever they can use, they'll use it to save you money and make it more environmental friendly building. So that's what the green buildings, and that's what the LEED stands for. So people, yes, they have to be a certified engineer. They have to, there's 4 different levels. You could be just certified, you could be silver, gold, or you can be platinum. So let's do question 22. You're talking to your friend about the green construction, and she seems to be confused about the third-party certification. In order to help, you explain to her that when someone says LEED, they are referring to, is that a lender? Or is that a leadership? It's definitely leadership, right? Not the leader, it's the leadership. So between option 2 and 4, pick your option, pick your choice. Okay, option number 4, because it is a leadership in energy and environmental design. That's what they're looking for, right? So option number 4. Okay, question 23, which of the statements regarding the green construction are true? Okay, last question, I promise. Because it's an ABCD, use the method of elimination, okay? Look at option A, requires less care and maintenance than a non-green home. Now, does that sound like a true statement? Yep, because it should be less care, less maintenance, less of everything. So I already know that whatever has A has to be a true statement, so I can see it's option 1, or it could be all of the above, okay? It's not really helping. Option B, the green home is designed to use less energy and more water than non-green homes. So, option B, you tell me, who thinks option B is a false statement? Who thinks it's a true statement? Did you pick true? And if you did, then that's you lost the mark. Because option B is a false statement. What's the problem? What is the problem with option B? It designs to use less energy, which is true, but it says what? More water. It should not be more, it should be less of everything. So for that reason, option B is false. So I'll let you know the answer should be option number 1, because it's not all of the above. You get the point? But we're going to continue. What's the problem with option C then? Because I know A and D is true, so that means there's something problem with this option C. Green construction allows the ample fresh air and the artificial light. What are the key words? Ample fresh air sounds good, but it says artificial light, so that's definitely a false statement, right? So it should be a natural light. Beautiful. Okay, so C is false, and D has to be a true statement. It's designed to take advantage of the renewable resources, and that's true. But what if I say it's designed to take advantage of all of the renewable resources? Would that be a true or false statement then? Then it would become a false statement because there's a lot of resources, not just, like some would be true, but if I say all, then that becomes a false statement. So as you see, they trick a lot of things in here, so be careful. We finally finished with this chapter. Now that is a huge chapter. It had a lot of information, but good job, you survived. So right now, go back in your notes, go through them, go through your quizzes, okay? So do all the questions on this chapter, and I'll see you in the next chapter.